This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Your brand, whether a company or an organization, may be costing you customers. Branding expert Jane Cavalier says it's time to rethink the relationship between an organization's brand and society. Ms. Cavalier says traditional brands have sold without any accountability for their cultural impact, something that's now being challenged by the cancel culture. Jane Cavalier offers examples and tips for branding in the 21st century in this Biz News interview podcast. Well, you have said it is time to rethink the relationship between brands and society. Why? And what do you mean by that?
Well, thanks, Douglas. I think there are a couple of things that are in the backdrop here. Number one, I talk about the world going through metamorphosis, meaning we see lots of different change around us, and I say this isn't usual change. This is epic change, like let's say a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, where everything that a ground-bound insect is now winging, flying, all of that change. That's the world in which we're in. That's one. That creates a world, what we call a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And people aren't well trained to live in a VUCA world. You add the pandemic to that, and I talk about something called the Age of New Essentialism, where mass consumerism is basically broken. People are making decisions that they've never made before. Less is more. I don't want things. I want experiences. Relationships are important. And all of a sudden, we're in a totally different world of decision-making for human beings. Now, the brand paradigm that we work in is for the old world, the mass consumer world, right? Buy stuff. Get ahead. And that mindset doesn't really exist anymore. So I say we need to rethink the relationship, because instead of selling people, brands today need to serve people. Meaning that people are trying to figure out how to navigate their way in a world that they don't understand. And they need brands to help them figure that out. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hear what you're saying, but if I'm selling something, if I'm a car dealer in Poughkeepsie, I want to distinguish myself from the other car dealers that are up and down the street. How on earth am I supposed to serve the public when I want to sell cars?
And that's a great question. And the way that I encourage people to think about it is, you want to sell a car, but help people understand what that car means to the life that they can live in the future. And so instead of being very transactional, this is the car, this is how I sell it, I have good customer service, and this is why you should buy it from me, which is a very self-centered proposition. A brand is much more about, this is your life, this is your world, this is how you want to live it. Let me tell you how working with this dealership will help you get all of the things that you want in your life. We're here to help you.
And so if I'm the dealership, and probably every dealership in the country sponsors a Little League team or something like that, perhaps I should be promoting that.
I think absolutely. I think amplifying that you are part of building a better world, because in the age of new essentialism, people want brands and companies that help build a better world, that just don't make money, that do things that pay back locally and even on a larger level. So absolutely promote that, to say that I'm aligned with your values and the things that you want to accomplish in the world. I'm part of the solution.
Is it possible for a brand, a retailer, or a seller of goods to get ahead of the curve on this, and all of a sudden the other people who have never bought into it and are selling the things catch up and overtake them?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting about branding, and I'll give a really good example. I saw a local guy the other day, and he has like a bug business, help exterminate mosquitoes. He's a bug exterminator. And his brand is all about, it's safe to play outside again. It's safe to play outside again.
Well, that's a great idea
There
because
you
you wouldn't
go.
have mosquitoes, right?
There, exactly. And so that person really understood branding. He understood exactly the pain that people were feeling and the great joy around what? The fact that they could be outside again and really enjoy living that. That's the difference between branding and marketing, which would be a messaging. We're the number one exterminator. We have the best service. Call us. You see how one is much more enchanting than the other?
And have you been able to document how this has helped companies or brands over the recent past?
Well, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of examples of, I'll give you two that maybe could illustrate it. I give this because they're well-known examples. So, as you remember, and I remember when computers were introduced, and IBM said this is a fast processing, with processing power that'll help you be more productive at work. Assuming that everybody wanted a work machine, they were called workstations. And Apple said, not really. It's not what it's about. It's about unleashing your personal creativity. Who cares about processing and productivity? You could use this processing power to do things you could never do before. And whether you want to create and music or whether you want to do, and what was the brand all about? Youthful, creative, right? Unleashed people. And that, they said, and the pointer device was called a mouse. Very simple. And even though it was radical ease of use was kind of their differentiator, they attached it to you being able to do things you could never do before by unleashing your creativity. That's the difference between an Enchanted Brand, which was Apple, and maybe somebody's just doing marketing, messaging, IBM.
And that segues right into the title of your new book. Tell us about that.
Well, I talk about Enchanted Brands because I feel that in this new world, human beings are at risk of their humanity. And I think that brands are very pervasive cultural artifacts. They're like art. Brands are made to reflect things that are important to us, our dreams. Now, in the past, people have made brands that have exploited people. I mean, we don't have girls with eating disorders out of nowhere. I mean, this comes partly from fashion and beauty brands marketing a certain way of being and saying, that love and success and power is linked to that. And I suggest that we be accountable for the brands that we create. And instead of polluting the landscape, we nurture the landscape with brands that empower people, that recognize it's a scary, uncertain, and ambiguous world, but this brand will help you get to where you want to be. Imagine it. Co-create it with us. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but that's okay.
That's a pretty radical approach to marketing, I'd say.
Well, and I think people will grab onto those brands. I think they are looking for companions on this very tumultuous journey. And when you have a brand like that, Douglas, it does a couple of things. It's not just about selling your products. It's about trying to attract the talent you want to your company. People are like, why do we even need to work anymore? Why do I need, you have children. Why do I need to work for you? Why do I need to work hard? That's one piece. Another piece, investors. Why do I need to stay with you in a very turbulent market? Customers, there's a new bright, shiny object over there. Why do I need to stay with yours? How do you get that glue? And what I'm suggesting is that you make a connection on another level. I'm not the shiniest, brightest object, but I'm something that's meaningful to you. Maybe I'm not the employer that's closest or going to pay you the most, but there's another reason you want to work for me. Right? And to investors, yes, you can go ahead and trade stocks, but you'll be trading out in a relationship that's got a lot of meaning for a company that's trying to do something valuable in the world. Stay with us. So this is really trying to move everything, Douglas, from a transactional level to a relationship level. All right? And I say in the book, The Enchanted Brand, how do you do that? This is where it becomes more radical. In the old days, brands used to tell people how to think and feel. I suggest, like great art, you don't tell people how to think and feel, you stimulate that. You and I can look at the same Rothko painting. It's not literally telling us how to think and feel, but we're both walking away with a very similar understanding. You have your take on it, I have my take on it, but it hits us the same way. So that's what Enchanted Brands are architected to stimulate the imagination so you can come to your own decision. You can absorb it and make it part of who you want to be and how you want to navigate the world.
I know you probably don't want to endorse a particular brand or brands, but could you give us a good example or two?
Sure. I have a section in the book, a gallery, where I talk about 10 enchanted brands, some new, some old. And I'll give you another well-known one. I'm not an American farmer, but I've worn a John Deere hat. And there's a lot of people who will bleed green because they believe in the American farm ethos. That's a mythology. That mythology, the wheat in the field, the sun coming up, farmers with overalls, a beautiful American, wholesome farm ethic. That is the essence of John Deere, not heavy machinery, and that's what the product. But that brand is why you see a lot of people who've never been on a farm wear a John Deere hat. It's rugged, it's authentic, it's American, it goes deep. That's a very well-crafted mythology.
I wonder if John Deere can count how many tractors and harvesters they have sold based on that, because increasingly it seems farming is corporate. The good old family farm is indeed almost mythology.
Yeah, and I think you'll find a lot of those farmers are the ones who will stand by their John Deere, who wear their hats. It's a symbol of that individual, that freedom, who we are. And that's why you could see the public rallying around that. That's where the brand becomes valuable. It transcends rationality. That's why they say it becomes irrational, because people make an emotional commitment, and that's what makes it stick.
You speak from great experience. Would you give our listeners and viewers a thumbnail sketch of your resume?
Sure, Douglas. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've worked for over 100 companies, both globally, nationally, locally. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies like American Express, Citibank, global companies like ExxonMobil and Samsung. I've, worked for the U.S. Navy and the Department of State and in the government, because branding and brand America and how we convey ourselves to the world really matters. I've worked for not-for-profits, Boston Children's Hospital, and I've worked for celebrities, Gisele Bündchen and Jessica Seinfeld. So it's sort of a gamut of different organizations and people who want to leverage the power of brand to accelerate their goals in the world.
Would you now give us a way to get in touch with you? You probably have a website.
I do. You can, if you're interested in learning more about the book, you can go to theenchantedbrand.com. It's also available on Amazon, and this week just became a #1 bestseller in the business category. If you'd like to learn more about my company, Brightmark Consulting, you can go to www.brightmarkconsulting.com. You'll also find me on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Jane, I'm tempted to ask, how have you rebranded yourself?
It's interesting, Douglas, because I was doing branding before there was an internet. So I've been doing branding over 30 years, right? And so I remember the days of television dominance, and I've lived through the age of the fracturing media and now the ultra micro fractioning with the internet. And I think the way that I've rebranded myself, because I'm also very interested in the revolutionizing effects of technology on the human condition. And I'm a sociologist, in my hobby life. And so I've kind of rebranded myself in the sense that creating awareness that there is a very different world with very different rules, which is why when we continue to do the same things over and over again, they're really not working. And instead of, hitting ourselves in the head and going, why is this not working? I'm not doing this right. Is to say, maybe I need to be doing it differently. So I've rebranded myself in the sense that of bringing the kinds of branding practices that are needed in today's world moving forward.
It sounds awfully complex, but I from a layperson's standpoint, at least.
It's interesting. It's not as straightforward as people think it is, because when you work in the world of emotions and symbols, you have to really think things through, and you have to understand how people think and operate. Most decisions are emotionally based. And if you're willing to really embrace that idea, then you start to ask yourself the question, well, how am I connecting to people's emotions? And then that's an area a lot of people don't feel comfortable thinking about.
Jane, you've been very generous with your thoughts, and I know you've gotten a lot of people probably spinning about, rethinking what they've been doing. But what would you like to add that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
The only thing I would add is, not everybody has to have a brand. I think companies that have a brand are companies that really care about their customers, because the customers need a brand. They appreciate a brand. I would much rather get my jewelry in a Tiffany blue box than a white box. Does it add something? Yes, it does. And so enchanting life, delighting people, particularly in these very difficult times, really makes a difference. But that's a choice. Every company, every car dealership, every baseball team, it doesn't matter what your organization is, you can create a brand for it that enchants everybody. So I hope people do that, because I think it adds a lot to the world.
You've been watching the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.